Welcome to another episode of MissTrial, the new hit podcast where me and my two colleagues and friends, former prosecutors, former member of Congress, former public servants, all of us are here to talk about our experience and our lens at which we look at all things at the intersection of law and politics. I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo, and I'm so happy to be here with Danya Perry and Kathleen Rice. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Pretty good.
Good
to see you all.
Well, there's so much for us to
do in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
For people in parts of the country.
Oh my God.
What's going on in Florida?
I don't think it was as bad as they thought in some places, but it's still just massive flooding and destruction.
Yeah. And I mean, millions of people were made to evacuate and incredibly disruptive at an absolute minimum. It's horrible.
Absolutely horrible. I read that 2 million people are out of power and all of that. And you know what really compounds, and I'm so glad you brought that up, that's what so many people are going through while we're sitting here podcasting, in our nice computers and in New York. Because one of the things that we're going to talk about today, we wanted to just mention is these lies that Donald Trump is spreading about FEMA. I mean, it's just horrendous. I was reading that they were literally saying things like that Kamala Harris spent FEMA money on housing migrants, that there were no helicopters being used to rescue people, that FEMA told victims that they'd only get $750, just ridiculous stuff that Biden had to come out and say these are outright lies. I mean,
but it's not even just him, Karen. It's not even just Trump. I mean, it's J.D. Vance. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene saying the government is controlling the weather. I mean, now she's also the one that says like forest fires were started with Jewish space lasers. Right, exactly. So, I mean, like everything that comes out of her mouth is just assumed to be batshit crazy, but this is like beyond the pale.
Didn't Trump at some point suggest throwing bombs into the center, into the eye of a hurricane or something? Am I making that up? Or, I mean, I know it sounds so crazy. As I'm saying, I was like, he couldn't have possibly said that, but he did suggest injecting bleach into our veins. So I think he said that. So he may not
think he did
on natural disasters, but even for him, this is next level because it's dangerous for the survivors, the people who are going through this, if they cannot trust the folks who are out there risking their lives. So it's dangerous for the survivors. It's incredibly demoralizing for the FEMA and local and state officials who are out there putting their own lives on the line.
Yeah. But also just so important though, also Danya and Karen, to talk about, why he even has the opportunity to do this. What he's doing is conflating two separate pots of money, if you will. FEMA money is going to house migrants. That is true. But that money was not money taken away from emergency disaster relief. That's a totally separate pot of money that, by the way, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to have to vote to refill those coffers. And what is she going to do? Say no? What's Anna Luna, whatever her name is, from Florida going to say when a relief package comes up? And by the way, Mike Johnson has said that, who's the Speaker of the House, has already said that he's not going to take up a relief bill until after the election. I mean, it's just so outrageous, given that what we know Trump did whenever there was a natural disaster, especially forest fires in California, and this is well documented, he refused to send money, relief, any kind of help to California. I mean, he has this awful nickname for the governor there that I'm not even going to repeat, but he considers that a Democratic state. So he said, nope, sorry, no money for these forest fires, until members of his cabinet, his staff, had to show him, this pea brain, that guess what? There are actually Republicans in Orange County, California. So you really need to send the money. And he said, okay, send the money. So like for him, the like hypocrisy of saying, he's not even saying that they're doing that. It's worse. Because he's so demonized any migrant in this country, that he was kind of saw this as two bites, at an apple. And people are going to listen.
Charge of government at some point. Like, doesn't he understand how the pots of money work?
No, he doesn't.
Well, that's one possibility. The other is he doesn't care, which is also equally likely. See, I'm having these like crazy flashbacks, and I don't know. They're so crazy that I don't know if I'm making them up or if they actually happened. But
let's talk about what are the flashbacks? Tell us.
I just had the one about a bomb into the eye of a hurricane, and then the other one, this image of him throwing like paper towels.
Yes.
People.
Yes. That's true. That was I think that was Puerto Rico, right? That was like a hurricane in Puerto Rico. He goes up and he's throwing paper towels at people. That's his way of helping. I mean, no, he's crazy. I mean, he's not the fact that this is a person who's being considered that might be the next president, that there's any chance, is just shocking. I mean, beyond shocking, almost as shocking as this new book that Bob Woodward has come out with. Some of the things that, have you heard about this new book, that this whole stuff that with Vladimir Putin, and, it's just unbelievable to me, that relationship, and that he was, that it's one thing that, okay, he sent him some like COVID tests. That's one of the things that came out in this book. The other thing that came out in this book is that apparently Biden curses like a sailor. I was like, hilarious. It makes me like him more.
Well, he does.
I know. Well, exactly. I was like, okay.
But Karen, just to flesh it out a little bit, it's not that he sent some COVID tests to his buddy Putin. It was, at the worst stage of the pandemic, when these tests were life-saving and impossible to come by.
Yes.
He's sending these kits and then denying it while the Putin administration is corroborating it. So it's just another, it's just par for the course. And apparently they have an ongoing relationship even after the presidency. These two bros get on the phone and talk strongman.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Talk strongman. But also, like, to have Donald Trump call Bob Woodward, of all things, a hack. I mean, you can call Bob Woodward many things, I'm sure, like you could call anyone, but that guy's journalistic cred is beyond reproach. I mean, for decades and decades and decades. And he is one of the most well-sourced writers and reporters ever. So, does anyone doubt that? And by the way, the book is called War, and I think it's coming out next week. I'm sure it's going to be another bestseller. I'm going to get it because I think, Bob Woodward, he gets people to talk. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. And there's no doubt that, and by the way, why should people care if Trump is having conversations with Putin? We talked about this about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago. Time flies. But we were talking about the Logan Act because, there are times when former members of administrations, former presidents have conversations. One, the Democrat, there was Michael Flynn, who had spoken to the Russians after Election Day in 2016, but before they were sworn in on January 20th, about don't worry, we'll take care of this when we get sworn in. Totally inappropriate. But again, he wasn't prosecuted for it. And John Kerry, after Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, the deal with Iran, the nuclear deal with Iran. He reached out to his, contacts in the Iranian government and had some conversations with them. Again, not prosecuted. But this kind of stuff, when you are talking about uncontrovertible evidence that Russia is trying to influence this election, and one of the two main candidates is having off the record and intentionally off the record, sending aides out of the room so he can have a totally private conversation with Putin. At the same time that Trump is telling all of the Republicans in the House not to vote for a funding bill for Ukraine. It's outrageous. Outrageous.
You also would want someone in office with the temperament and the sensibility that he would like for them not to be caught once with their hand in the cookie jar, but to just not care at all, to just be so above the law, right? He was I mean, what, we all kind of remember you say like time flies, but it also, seems like a million years ago. But there was the Mueller investigation, and with the Russian interference the last time, this time too, and he just does not care. The optics. I mean, it's more than optics here, but at a minimum, would stop most people in their tracks. But this is just someone who.
Yeah. No, what really bothered me was after Putin, after he gave Putin this sought after COVID test that that was hard to get, that was rare, et cetera. Putin was like, don't tell anyone, keep this between us. This will look bad for you. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I'm sure Putin records the phone calls between them. Like, he's got something hanging over his head, there's this weird, he likes these weird ominous figures like Hannibal Lecter. He admires Viktor Orban, Vladimir Putin. He likes these just murderous dictators. That's just his thing. It's just crazy. And they're both like these germaphobes, which is one of the reasons I guess they were sharing these COVID tests back in the day, but COVID's fake, right? It's false. We don't need masks. We don't need, whatever. It's all fake, but here we are.
That it was the same time that it was impossible for people to get Paxlovid, right? And then Trump,
right.
Endangered the lives of many other people by not telling them he had COVID, and then had I don't know if it was near death, but it was certainly a very, very difficult bout of COVID, was treated for it, and was one of the first people to get Paxlovid. So it's like, look, he was the president of the United States. So, but that's one thing, I think, but to be sending these tests to your, dictator bro in Russia instead of your own people, just look at it's like on the scale of things that he's done, but it is such a detail that brings to life the mentality, right? This sense,
the bromance
he lives. Yeah.
It's a real full-blown bromance for sure.
It's disgusting. The other crazy thing that came out this week was this whole controversy around this new movie that I think Michael Cohen has the writer on Mea Culpa on his podcast. This new film, The Apprentice, that was in the Cannes Film Festival. It won all these awards. It was this coveted ticket, and then normally that means that everyone's going to line up and you'll get all these deals, but no one would touch it with a 20-foot pole, because apparently Trump, called in all his buddies, et cetera, and bullied everybody. But so this seems like an incredible film. It's about his relationship with Roy Cohn, who was like his consummate fixer in chief, and the guy who taught him how to be the bully, right? To deny, and, admit nothing and always claim victory, whether you won or lost. It was played by Jeremy Strong, the guy from Succession, the Kendall Roy from Succession. It's supposed to be really, really good, really telling story of him. And, the thing that struck me about it, I mean, there's so many things about this movie. I'm just going to pull up my notes because I wrote down some quotes from it that I think are, I want to share with people.
While you're doing that, Karen, I just want to throw in the fact that Roy Cohn was his fixer, as you said, widely known to be just a ruthless, had no morals, no nothing, just win at all costs, and spent most of his life as a closeted homosexual. And as he was on his deathbed dying from AIDS, Trump abandoned him because, of course, why not? And even Roy Cohn, who was like the worst of the worst, said about Donald Trump, he has ice running through his veins. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, that no two people were closer. No one knew Donald Trump better than Roy Cohn, and that was his assessment. So anyway,
he taught him to be loyal to no one. He's the master, and the servant became the master.
So how could he be surprised on his deathbed, right?
Yeah. It's disgusting, these people.
You bring up some of those quotes, Karen. Can you? Because I haven't had a chance to look at this yet this week. So it's fictionalized.
Yes. So this
reality, like what is it?
This is
what is quotes? Like what are they?
So this is okay. So this was basically a movie called The Apprentice, and it dramatizes this relationship between this attorney, this controversial attorney figure, fixer Roy Cohn. I guess the prior Michael Cohen, and it includes all this very well researched information in there. It portrays Trump as, this young guy who's sort of bumbling in his father's shadow and didn't know what to do. His family had all these lawsuits because I guess they were racist and discriminated against Black tenants and all that. And how Roy took him under his wing and really mentored him and taught him things and taught him, these rules, these attack, deny everything, never admit defeat, all of that. And this was a script that was the writer did this tremendous amount of research, read old biographies, books that were out of date, watched old videos that were on Betamax, and, just really did a lot of research here. Trump was so upset by this film that they had cease and desist letters sent, and these lawyer letters that people write and we've written that basically say, cease and desist, or I will. So I immediately demand that you cease and desist marketing, distribution, and all that of this film. And of course, they never followed through with a lawsuit, right? Because how can they stop it, And the writer wanted this to be so kind of neutral, in the sense that, I shouldn't say neutral, but accurate, and not biased, that they got this foreign director. He's like Iranian, Danish director to do it, because he really didn't want this to be propaganda. He really wanted this to be, a well-researched, well-written, and unvarnished, unbiased portrayal of him. But Donald Trump tried to bully everybody into not bringing it, and it had a slight chilling effect in Hollywood, but eventually they got it here, and it's definitely coming out, and I can't wait to see it. I think Michael Cohen went to the premiere.
But Karen, the most controversial scene, talk about that.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to get to. I was just going to get to. So the thing and that's what I have because I have the quotes. We have to read from here. So the thing I loved, the thing about the movie that I thought was so controversial yet also well done, just from the reporting, is these scenes where it includes where he was raping his first wife, Ivana. And this came from the divorce proceeding, right? And it was just fascinating that they got this statement from her divorce proceeding that, she basically was able to, she put in there these statements, and then she later walked it back, and she said in a book that was written, she walked it back and said, basically, I'm having a trouble finding the language. So, but in the
she said it wasn't really rape. I said what I meant was I felt like I was being raped. As if to say, it was almost like I just didn't feel like having sex at that time. Right.
Well,
it was very specific that she used the word rape in this deposition.
She did, and what she said was, I guess he had some kind of scalp procedure to hide a bald spot, and had liposuction, and I guess he came home and he was really upset about it, and so that's when he attacked her, and he grabbed her by the hair, and he ripped out some of her hair, and he raped her, and that's what she said in the divorce proceeding. But then in the book, in the foreword to this book that came out later, she basically walked it back. Now this book is out of print, and they had to find a copy of this book. She basically walked it back and said what you just said, Kathleen, that it was, it was sex that I felt like I was raped, but it wasn't, criminal, whatever. She kind of walked it back, but she said, but it wasn't the kind of sex we had before. And then later, when he was running for president, she released a third statement basically saying, oh, it was just a lover's quarrel kind of thing. I love him. He'll be a great president. And, we raised 3 great kids. I don't know how much money he had to pay her to say that. But
like she was having her hair torn out of her head. Was that just her subjective feeling, or?
No, there was hair. That's what she said in her deposition.
Well, I know,
but there was hair. Yeah.
Walk that back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, it's just fascinating. Like he's how many women have to come forward and say he's a rapist? It's whether E. Jean Carroll, those other women who testified at that trial. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. But I can't wait to see this movie. And by all accounts, Jeremy Strong was incredible.
Did you guys watch Succession?
I did. I saw all of it.
Loved his character. It's so good.
It was so good. So good.
I wish I could watch it again for the first time.
Yes, right.
I feel that way about so many shows. Right now I'm in the middle of one of my favorite shows. I'm watching it for the second time because I loved it so much, which is Homeland. Have you guys seen that?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I'm doing that with The Wire, which I'm old enough, and that was long enough ago that it kind of is like seeing it for the first time because I forgot so much, except just that thought thing about how well done. I mean, you guys know as prosecutors,
so good,
perfect. You watch, and Karen, don't say anything because I know you can tell for them, but like Law and Order or other legal shows like cop shows, and you're like, no, it's not Law and Order per se, but I mean cop shows.
Yes. Other than Law and Order,
right.
Which, thanks to you. I'm just saying, like, sometimes it just doesn't seem as believable. This one was just so pitch perfect.
So authentic. Yeah.
Perfect.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I just had to make one more lighthearted recommendation that I just binged. Nobody Wants This with Kristen Bell and Adam Brody.
I never even heard of it.
I will say nothing more. Just get to it.
I need a new one. I'm almost finished.
What's it called?
Nobody Wants This is what it's called. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
So,
do you guys watch The Bear?
I haven't yet. Is it good?
Yes. Have you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I only finished season 1. So I heard season 2 was like the best, right?
The best. Like season 1 was great, especially if you're a foodie, which I'm not. But you can't watch it like when you're hungry. But it is, there's a lot. And it's like at times it seems like it's slow, but it's like on such a simmer, like literally. Yeah. Sorry.
I want to watch it.
That's
I want
to watch. Way to describe it, Danya. That's so good.
Yeah. Karen, you like to cook, don't you?
What?
I love to cook, right? Like farm.
I love cooking. Yes.
It's good drama and comedy. Some of the scenes are hilarious.
Yeah, really good.
Well, so I can't wait to watch it. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah.
Let's get back to our show here. What I really want to talk about is Elon Musk. Okay. We have to talk about Elon Musk and what is going on with this endorsement of Donald Trump. That's more than an endorsement. He's actually potentially providing in-kind campaign donations. I see conflicts of interest, all kinds of issues. There's also the Supreme Court decided not to hear an appeal. That we're going to talk about that. And there's just a lot to talk about because I think he's got some problems and us former prosecutors need to talk about it. But first, we're going to take our ad break for this show. We love our sponsors and I just really can't say enough good things about them. And then we're going to come back and talk about that as well as what's going on in the Supreme Court and other places in the area of women's rights, their bodily autonomy, and abortion. You heard about senolytics yet? It's a class of ingredients discovered less than 10 years ago, and they're being called the biggest discovery of our time for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical prime. So my life goals in my career and beyond require productivity, as you can imagine. But let's be honest, the aging process is not our friend. And when it comes to having the energy that I need to do all the things that I'm doing in productivity, I use Qualia Senolytics. So if someone would have told me that there was a science-backed ingredient that could help me feel 15 years younger in a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. But then I tried Qualia Senolytic. And now as we age, those zombie cells, they're called, or senescent cells that our body accumulates. They're sort of worthless, and they accumulate and cause aging, and they're sort of old, worn out cells. And they cause these symptoms of aging, like aches and discomfort, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental and physical energy. And it's like this weird, middle-aged feeling, whatever you want to call it. So it's almost like pruning a tree, the dead leaves off a plant. Qualia Senolytic removes those worn out cells, those senescent cells, to allow for the rest of your cells to thrive in your body. And you just have to do it 2 days a month. The first time I read that, I thought, is that a typo? But it's really just 2 days a month. So this formula is non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all the ingredients together. There's a 100-day money-back guarantee. It's clinically tested 2-day rejuvenation regimen, and it might hold the key to unlocking your cellular health and revitalizing aging tissues throughout your body. And I really highly recommend that you give it a try. Since I started using Qualia Senolytic, I've had higher energy levels. I feel much younger, and I feel much more productive, enthusiastic, and my brain just feels more sharp, and I have less aches and pains. So resist aging at the cellular level like I do. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to qualialife.com/MissTrial for up to 50% off, and use code MissTrial at checkout for an additional 15% off. For your convenience, Qualia Senolytic is also available at select GNC locations near you. That's QUALIA life.com/MissTrial for an extra 15% off. Thanks to Qualia for sponsoring today's episode. Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. Did you have a little too much fun in the sun this summer? I know I did. And it's no secret that UV rays can take a toll on our skin, leaving it dry, tired, less vibrant. And if you want to hit the undo button on UV-induced aging, say hello to OneSkin, your secret weapon against the summer's toll on your skin. OneSkin products are all powered by the revolutionary OS1 peptide. This proprietary peptide is scientifically proven to reduce dysfunctional senescent cells, which is a central source of skin aging. Their scientists have shown that it can actually reverse the biological age of skin by several years in their groundbreaking research. Healthier, more youthful looking skin doesn't just look great, which we all want, obviously, but it's good for your overall health too. As the leaves change color this fall, help your skin undergo its own transformation with OneSkin. Their products work tirelessly to repair, rejuvenate, and erase the signs of summer damage, ensuring you step into the new season with the healthiest skin of your life. Head over to oneskin.co and explore how their products can become your skin's new savior. For a limited time, our listeners can get 15% off OneSkin with our code MissTrial, MISS trial, 2 S's, at oneskin.co. What I love the most about OneSkin is I can just easily add it to my routine. I put it on my face and I look younger. Noticeably, people notice. And I also feel younger, and I feel good about myself knowing that I look younger than my actual age, which is 58. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company, and it addresses skin health at a molecular level, targeting the root causes of aging, so skin behaves, feels, and appears younger. It's time to get started with your new face, eye, and body routine at a discounted rate today. Get 15% off with code MissTrial at oneskin.co. So there's no M on the N, right? It's ONESKIN.co, and put the code MissTrial with 2 S's to get 15% off your purchase. They'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show. We only have one body, one skin, and only you can choose to make it better. Age healthy with OneSkin. Okay, we're back, and I love our sponsors. We're so lucky that they help us keep the lights on and make it so that we can have this incredible show where the three of us who are so busy, it's like the one time every week we get to actually be in the same room virtually and see one another. And that's why if we're talking about our favorite shows and that kind of thing a little much, it's just because we're friends and we're happy to be together. And, we hardly see each other because we got so much going on. Danya just, did an oral argument, an appellate oral argument yesterday. I'm like, how do you have time to watch these shows? Because you're so busy, you work so hard. And on the okay, that's the secret. That's the secret. That's what I've got to do. Okay. Elon Musk. Okay. First of all, let's just set the table, and then I want to just throw it to you guys and hear what you have to say. So Elon Musk has, is one of the wealthiest people in the world.
I think he's the wealthiest, Karen.
Right? Well, he's the wealthiest person in the world. He is an immigrant to this country, which I think is a good thing to say. He was not born here. And he is the owner of many businesses, including SpaceX and Tesla, that get government contracts. Okay. He is somebody who has benefited greatly from this country. And I think this country has helped make him the richest person in the world. He has donated to Democrats, to Republicans, but this election, he's decided to hitch his satellite to Donald Trump, and he's gone all in. He's the owner of Twitter, or X, and the reason that's significant is by being that owner, he has a huge megaphone, because it could be considered a news organization, or is it a social media platform, or what is it? It's a public square where people speak, including him. And so he is doing things like donating spaces that other people might have to pay for. He is getting endorsements from Elon Musk, and he might be getting these endorsements algorithmically placed in a way that others have to pay for. There's so many problems that I see with what he's doing, given federal campaign financing rules, laws that govern things like corporations and individuals, and fairness doctrine that governs giving equal time or equal opportunity to two different political candidates if you are a news organization. There's so many issues that we need to unpack here. And I throw it to you guys, let's do some issue spotting, talk about it, and really just point out what the problems are here and why it is that more people need to be talking about this and really need to be seeing the red flags here. Kathleen, I'm going to start with you. As a former member of Congress and a former district attorney, tell us what the issues you see here, especially with the government contracts.
So that's exactly what I want to do. And this is a little technical, but I think it's really important for people to understand that not only is Elon Musk the rich, any given day, but he is the richest man in the world. But he has a number of contracts with the U.S. government that are so significant, not just financially, but also from a national security standpoint, domestic security standpoint. His ventures, primarily through SpaceX, have established these contracts with various, U.S. government agencies, which reflects deepening ties in both, most significantly in defense and intelligence. So there's a classified contract with the U.S. government that was developed in 2021, where SpaceX secured a massive classified contract valued at $1.8 billion. So the specific agency associated with this contract remains undisclosed, which highlights the secretive nature of some of Musk's dealings with the government. So we can't say any more about that because we can't even identify the agency. So that's one. Then you have what's called the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, that SpaceX has been contracted to provide satellite technologies for the NRO, which is responsible for the United States satellite reconnaissance and intelligence efforts. Kind of important work. So this specific partnership, illustrates Musk's involvement in supporting national security through advanced technology. So that's number two. Number three is he has in 2023, SpaceX launched a division called Starshield that's aimed specifically at government clients. And in August of that year, the U.S. Space Force, there is such a thing, awarded Starshield a $70 million contract. This division's designed to handle secure communications from data collection for military operations. So again, like highly, highly, highly important communications that we contract directly, the U.S. government contracts directly with Starshield to provide. And then last, I would say that that SpaceX's Starlink which is a satellite internet service, has also been utilized by the U.S. military, particularly and most notably, I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but in conflict zones like Ukraine, ironically, since Trump doesn't really care about Ukraine, but Elon Musk's Starlink, it is that technology has been used in conflict zones like Ukraine, where it provides critical communication capabilities, which in a war zone is critically important. So I would just give those four as a background. But I think what these contracts underscore is the prominent role in the U.S. government's efforts to advance our capabilities in space, secure communications, all of these fields. And we're directly contracting with Elon Musk. Now, just to be clear also for our listeners, I think it's that Trump has made it very clear that not only although he says, I think Elon Musk is too busy to really join, to be a member of my cabinet. He has already said that he wants him to be appointed to the audit commission that is going to go through every federal agency and decide where wasteful spending is happening. Now, this is a guy who has billions of dollars in contracts with the U.S. government through various federal agencies. And he is going to decide, you can imagine, any expenditure that doesn't have to do with my companies is wasteful spending. I mean, that's taking it to the nth degree.
He's also, the company and he are also under various government investigations.
Yes,
right?
yes.
At a minimum, a sexual harassment one against him. There's, I believe, securities, the Department of Justice, maybe the National Labor Relations Board. I could get the various investigations wrong, but significant investigations where.
And by the way, so to your point, which is if Trump becomes president, those investigations go away because he can do what he wants to protect Elon Musk. I mean, the level of banana republicness that, if that's such a word, that would go on if, I mean, it's just insane. So I just wanted to give that backdrop, Danya, and then you take it away and you can talk about some of the more, but
both of you, I have a question. Both of you have worked for the federal government. I have not. What are the conflict of interest issues when it comes to working for the federal government? Trump, for example, had to step away from his businesses and have his kids run them while he was president because there are conflicts of interest. And, obviously there's issues with conflicts of interest with Clarence Thomas. We see him in all his getting gifts, et cetera. There's so many complicated conflict of interest issues. What would Elon Musk have to do in order to provide this role? And how can he get around it? Because he already said, I won't get paid. I don't need a title. I don't need anything. So he's going to get around Senate confirmation. He's going to get around conflict of interest, but he'll still have this outsized advisory role what triggers kind of reporting and all of that? How do we keep this from being them sidestepping all of the issues, all of the guardrails and controls that would normally be in place when you're a real government employee, whether it's a cabinet level position or when you have to be confirmed by the Senate and you have to do things like that are to divest yourself to get rid of those conflicts. So, I mean, it just seems like there's such room for fraud and conflicts here.
Yeah, Kathleen, you might be able to speak to this more than I.
What I would say is, you mentioned that Trump had to divest. He didn't. He never did. And he could say that, he had that big press conference with all these boxes and my two sons are going to take over the business. It was all bullshit. He still ran everything. He let all these foreign dignitaries stay in the Trump International Hotel. I mean, it was a joke, the amount of money that his business has made while he was president. So that's that. And Elon Musk being the richest man, I mean, they'll figure out a way. I mean, look, if the Senate is under Republican control and so is the House, who's going to be the watchdog? There will be no watchdog. They will not bring him inside the cabinet so that he's not subjected to that, even though they could just put him in an acting role. They'll just have him, he's like, wouldn't it be great just to get advice from Elon Musk? So he can just allow him into the Oval Office whenever he wants. He can ask his opinion about this or that. He can ask, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And there's literally no oversight. There's no watchdog, especially if Republicans control all three, the White House, the Senate, and the House.
Yeah, it will be like, Karen, you referenced Clarence Thomas, and his conflicts. And we've all sat here in abject frustration that there are no, as you say, watchdog, right? There's no oversight. There's no actual rules that would boot him or even force him to recuse himself. It's going to be the same thing, right? They will make up their own rules as they go and will allow them to, create their own permission structure to change up all of the norms that, have existed since time immemorial. And it's truly frightening. So
Danya, let me talk about the case that I think the Supreme Court just decided, where they smacked down Elon Musk and said, sorry, the Justice Department, or Jack Smith specifically, was allowed to demand that you produce certain tweets that Donald Trump put out, especially related to Jan 6. So just talk about that, because this is one of those things that if Trump becomes president again, he can shut down investigations or start them or shut them down just with the snap of a finger.
Yeah, I mean, here's an example of the Supreme Court not inserting itself, and they do it when they deny certiorari, right, which is their review of an issue that a lower court has decided. They just do it very patently. They don't say why. There aren't opinions about it, so we don't know that much. All we know obviously what's happened in the courts below, where Jack Smith was seeking communications from Twitter/X, and there was a whole kerfluffle over some years. I think that was in 22, 21. We've said, there's no, time doesn't work anymore. He objected not just to the production, really, but to the non-disclosure order, that he wasn't supposed to tell Trump about this. And he said that's a First Amendment violation.
By the way, as prosecutors, we did that all the time. Every time you get a search warrant, right? When you have a pending investigation, first of all, you have to get a search warrant, which means you have to go to the judge. You have to show that there's probable cause to believe that both a crime occurred and that there's evidence of the crime to be found in that location. And if it's an investigation and it's to a third party, it's very standard for prosecutors. I'm sure you did it all the time. I did it all the time, to ask for these. Don't tell them that there's a pending investigation. Why? Because bad guys do things like get rid of, the evidence, right? They can alter the evidence, get rid of that's where the cover up is worse than the crime comes in, I think, because there's always that attempt. So this is very standard. And it's not like Elon Musk hasn't gotten a million of these non-disclosure orders for lots and lots of people, but who has he decided to litigate this on behalf of? And that's another question I have. And I didn't mean to take to derail what you were saying, but that's another question I have. Isn't this an in-kind campaign donation? That he's litigating this, hiring lawyers to litigate this on behalf of Donald Trump? He's saying,
it's his own. Yes and no. I mean, his framing of it is it's for himself, right, and his company, that they don't want to be forced to disclose, right, that it's their First Amendment rights. But yes, given exactly what you said, that he doesn't do this for everyone or anyone else that we know of anyway, it does seem a little selective and a little suspect, on whose behalf he's really doing this. I mean, most yes, as you said, how many search warrants have each of us executed, right, with agents, and this is standard, and no one really objects to saying like, I really need to be able to tell the target of this investigation about this subpoena or the search warrant on a neutral third party that shouldn't have a stake in this. I mean, it's some of them object, on other grounds, but not. I haven't at least seen an objection to the non-disclosure piece, to the with a First Amendment gloss on it. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, and I'm sure it has, but it's pretty unusual. And I think here, given the circumstances of the context, should raise some eyebrows.
Were you surprised that the Supreme Court chose not to hear the case, which means that the lower court ruling saying this was fine, and Jack Smith, the search warrant was fine, which means Jack Smith can use the tweets that were the ones that were, well, he can use them so to the extent that they can now be ruled on by Judge Chutkin, to determine whether or not those were personal or presidential, and therefore presidential immunity. I was surprised that the Supreme Court basically said, no, it's okay.
Well, you're surprised just because of the world we're living in now. Like,
yes, that's true. That's true.
But in a normal world, they shouldn't have granted certiorari. Like, this was, this happens every single day, all across the country. It's the way that law enforcement agencies carry out, the administration of justice and the investigation of suspected crimes. The world couldn't, the criminal justice world couldn't function, without that. And so you would have normally, expected a rational Supreme Court to deny it. But here we're surprised.
You're right. The world we're living in and the Supreme Court we have now become used to, and the things that go on there is a little terrifying. Speaking of which, do you see this new Senate Judiciary report that's coming out on Brett Kavanaugh, and the fact that so Senator Whitehouse, I'll just frame it and then we'll go to our final topic, but we have to at least mention this. Senator Whitehouse, Sheldon Whitehouse, who's a Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, has been trying for many, many, many years to figure out what happened. Tell me about this investigation that went on with Brett Kavanaugh. Remember when Christine Blasey Ford came forward and said she was sexually assaulted by him in high school? And then there was another woman, his colleague at Yale, who said he shoved his private parts in her face one night at Yale. And they had like a tip line. The FBI had a tip line to supplement the background investigation, and what came of it. And Senator Whitehouse has been trying to figure that out all these years, and he's been blocked and no one's turned anything over. He finally got emails and text messages and 302s and all of that. And he finally got it all. And this report is coming out this week. And there are some really shocking things in this report. For example, publicly, Trump was saying things like, follow all the leads, go and investigate everything you want. But internally, privately, he said, don't do that. He's like, these are the 10 people you're allowed to speak to. Don't follow up on anything. Don't corroborate anything. So there are contemporaneous emails between the FBI and the White House saying, hey, he's saying this publicly, but this is not what our instructions are. And so he got a hold of those. They got over 4,500 calls about Brett Kavanaugh, complaints and tips, et cetera. And guess where those tips went? The tip line, straight to the White House. Straight to the White House. Never followed up, never did anything. And the FBI was like, look, we don't have the authority to do more than what we're told. And there's no rule book for these supplemental background checks and investigations. And so I can't wait to read this report that's coming out. It's just unbelievable. And I will say that thank God for legitimate members of Congress like Senator Whitehouse, who don't give up and do their job and do things like this. And it just makes me admire you so much more, Kathleen, when I think about what the role you served as a member of Congress and how important that role is. And so anyway, I had to mention that because we just from what you guys were just talking about. But let's by
the way, just to put a final point on that, Brett Kavanaugh's on the Supreme Court, so it's nice to know this, but it would have been nice to have had this investigation go on. You know what I mean? It's just unbelievable that.
Well, so is Clarence Thomas, who Anita Hill told us who he was too, right? And then we've got Donald Trump, who's essentially a rapist. Like it's just crazy. Our country, whatever. It's just crazy. So these are our leaders. So speaking of, let's talk about abortion and women's rights.
And the Supreme Court. So some news this week from the Supreme Court. So they are back in session after their summer break. They really had to take some time off after their gangbanger of a decision on their last day in the spring term. And they're back, and first order of the day for them is always to publish which cases they are reviewing and which cases they're denying review. And so they denied review for over 1,000 cases, I believe, and granted it for about 15. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But in addition to the Elon Musk X petition that they denied, they also, interestingly, I think, denied a petition from the Biden administration to send a dispute over emergency abortion procedures that had come up in Texas. The Biden administration had lost, and we'll get into that, and wanted the Supreme Court to reverse and send it back to the lower courts. And the Supreme Court said no. So they allowed to stand the lower court, the Court of Appeals decision. And all of this centers around something called the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, EMTALA, which requires hospitals that take federal funds to provide emergency care, emergency treatments to patients that show up at their doorsteps. There was some finding this law was enacted some time ago because there was significant concern and evidence of hospitals that were really turning patients away who couldn't pay, and they refused to stabilize them. So they would just send these people back in the street, and they would, suffer exactly the consequences you'd imagine. And so EMTALA was enacted, and it requires, again, stabilizing treatments to patients who arrive with these emergency conditions that seriously threaten their lives, their health, or, a serious bodily function. And as we've talked about in this podcast, federal law trumps state law ordinarily. Apparently not in the state of Texas here, right? That's the supremacy clause. And so
that's what confused me. I hope you explain this, because I was like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. It's not how we understand it.
Right. This one is a bit of a head scratcher, and you wonder if it's not a result-oriented decision, because every patient that shows up who is going to die or suffer organ failure or loss of fertility or something really significant, they show up at a hospital, the hospital has to stabilize them. But in the state of Texas, if a woman is suffering from an ectopic pregnancy, that will result in her death, and certainly the death of the fetus or the non-viability of the fetus, they are not required to treat that person. According to the Court of Appeals, which is now the law in the Fifth Circuit, which covers Texas, which has a very significant abortion ban, and the Attorney General there, Ken Paxton, who is an eminence grise, who we've seen time and time again upholding these kinds of laws and principles. So there, I'll read from the Court of Appeals decision, which is now, again, the law, because the Supreme Court has refused to say anything different. The court there held that EMTALA does not mandate physicians to provide abortion when that is necessary stabilizing treatment for an emergency medical condition. So that's the ruling there. And they said that the practice of medicine has to be governed by the states, and the doctors must comply with state law, notwithstanding EMTALA's stabilization mandate and the preemption provision. So really, the case here dealt with whether EMTALA preempted state law on just this narrow ground. The state's not arguing, if someone shows up with a burst appendix, does the hospital have to treat them or not? Yes, they do, because EMTALA applies. But it doesn't have to if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy. I believe
that makes no sense, because an ectopic pregnancy means that there is a fertilized egg, right? There's an embryo that has implanted itself outside the uterus, inside the fallopian tube, right? It cannot
non-viable,
it cannot,
right?
Non-viable, and not only that, if it bursts, once it grows, it'll create if it's not treated, isn't that life-threatening? I mean, I don't understand. What are you supposed to do? That's considered an abortion?
In the state of Texas, doctors can refuse to provide it. Now, at least until the woman is actively dying. So, and we've all heard these horror stories. There's a couple out of, Georgia, and Georgia's also now, another battleground, both electorally, of course, but in the abortion front. And not to switch topics, but, we're same topic, but different court. There was a ruling recently by a Superior Court judge that overruled, essentially, or said that Georgia's 6-week pregnancy ban violates privacy rights under the state constitution. It's a feisty order. He wrote, this judge, Robert McBurney wrote, quote, "Women are not some piece of collectively owned community property that the disposition of which is decided by majority vote." The Supreme Court disagreed with that and decided that women are collectively owned community property, the disposition of which is decided by their vote. And they reinstated the 6-week abortion ban this week. So, and Georgia, again, is going to be one of the states that is going to decide this election. And I hope that Georgians are motivated by this to come to the voting booths, because this is, a terrifying proposition. We've seen women who have died. I was at the ProPublica, I think, did an expose of 2 women who died unnecessarily because they were forced to suffer through pregnancies that were not viable, or that, caused them serious harm and could have been prevented, and they died. And, we don't even know all these stories, because a lot of people don't seek care because they're not allowed to have care for their own health, or make their own decisions. And so, this is not going to stop unless people make it stop.
What's fascinating is it's the only area of medicine that I can think of where a doctor has to wonder, am I allowed to provide this care? Do I have to wait until the person becomes gravely ill to the point of death, where if I get that wrong, I can't save them, I can't revive them, right? In every other circumstance, in every other medical circumstance, doctors and their patients will have a conversation or make a decision, about, okay, I'm about to do this or not do that. And frankly, if they don't do certain things, they can be charged with they could be sued for medical malpractice. And imagine if they get that wrong, right? Imagine if they're like, well, I could be a felon if I perform an abortion before it's at the point where it's about to save their life. But if I don't do it and they die, I could be sued for medical malpractice. Like,
you can imagine a phone call, right, between the doctor and his or her lawyer, right? Well, how much is she hemorrhaging? How much pain is she in? Send her and see, have her come back in 20 hours when she's throwing up blood. I mean, it's actually giving me.
But you know what? I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because, everyone talks about, all right, what are the big issues that voters care about this year? Well, certainly the economy, immigration, democracy. And I would say, I'm saying abortion last, but I think it's probably a little higher up. And if you listen to Donald Trump talk about why I just did what Democrats and Republicans and independents all wanted. They all wanted this decision to go back to each individual state. Okay, so first of all, that's not true. certainly Democrats did not want, and there were a lot of Republicans and independents who didn't want this either. But assume, okay, so now it's back in the states. And if you look at all the states, it immediately started limiting women's access to abortion health care. The number went through the roof. But just even more importantly, those states that, like, Texas, Florida now, this year on Florida, on the ballot in Florida is a referendum on abortion, because they instituted a 6-week ban based on, the legislature and Governor Ron DeSantis. It is undeniable that states don't want these limitations, that when voters are given the opportunity to weigh in, not legislators, not governors, not the president of the United States, actual voters, constituents, they are completely rejecting limiting a woman's right to abortion health care, period, hard stop. And there are, I think, at least 10 states this election who have similar referendums. So take that. I mean, come on. This issue, it just gets worse by the day, Danya, these stories you're talking about. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, they're not getting better.
They're not getting better, and they make no sense, right? If you apply it to any, instead Trump says things like women are killing babies after they're born, or women are getting, elective they're having abortions in the 9th month, elective abortions. Those things are actually not happening. That is not the case. And what is happening is instead women are dying waiting for medical care because doctors are too afraid to administer life-saving medical care. And it's just this horrendous state that we are in, and it's unnecessary. And what is the answer? 27 more days. What has to happen?
Danya, just if you can briefly, quick, because it's so hard to read this. I mean, in some ways it's really easy to read the Supreme Court, but then other things, like even they seem to be like wringing their hands about what abortion cases that have to do with birth control or abortion or any of that kind of stuff. Like, what do you think is the ultimate outcome? Like, what's a voter takeaway on what the Supreme Court has done since Dobbs?
My answer is a little cynical. I think they don't want to touch it before the election. I think they must have been shocked by the public outrage over their decision overturning Roe. And I think they know the election's a month away, and they probably don't want to come near it. I don't know. It's hard to figure out the rhyme or the reason here. You're right, because again, this is one of those denials of certiorari without any discussion, right? There's no opinion, there's no dissent, we don't even know how.
Right. Why was there no dissent? Yeah. That was the other thing I didn't understand. Why were there no dissents? Where are the 3 liberal judges? Why weren't they dissent? Like that was the other confusing thing.
Yeah. I mean, there often aren't for denial, but yeah, I think they can. They just didn't have the votes and didn't think it was worth, raising. And I don't know that I'm not going to speculate, but I wish that there were some more transparency into what the thinking was. So we're only left to speculate. And of course, I've become such a cynic about the Supreme Court that my mind goes to the worst, which is they're just being political here and don't want to touch it right now with football.
Yeah, well, gotta love men making decisions about women's bodies. So crazy town.
Well, we could do a whole episode on that. Come on.
Well, we probably should. Well, I think we've reached the end of all the things that we were going to talk about today. Once again, it's been great always talking to you guys. I can't wait to, I want more TV recommendations. I want to hear more about what shows you like. It's funny. I'm on, as you were mentioning, I'm the legal advisor to Law and Order, and they have a new character, the lieutenant, who used to be played by Cameron Manheim, is now played by a new woman. And she was there the other day and I heard her voice kind of off to the side. I'm like, I know that voice. I know that voice. Oh my God, I know that voice. And it's Maura Tierney, who the voice is from one of my favorite shows, The Affair. And I wanted to go up. I haven't gone up to her yet because I don't want to be like, fangirling, but I want to be like, oh my God, I love that show so much. The Affair was so good. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's so good.
Yeah, I saw the first season. I guess I need to go back to it.
You have to. It's all set out in Montauk too.
It's in Montauk. It's Dominic West. It's Ruth Wilson. They do it from two different points of view. Anyway, it's a great show. Really well done. Anyway, we've reached the end of another great episode. I love you guys. It's great to see you, and I can't wait to see you again soon. And I'll continue. We've been doing hot takes. And we got to do lots of shows.
Dinner with Popok. He's literally texted us while we're on.
Yeah. I know. We have to have dinner. We have to have another dinner.
Next week.
See Popok.
Okay.
Yes, we'll have dinner with Popok, whose child, by the way, whose daughter Francesca is up for being baby of the year. So
housekeeping.
He's got to promote.
And this election was rigged.
I agree with that.
Adorable. I'm voting.
She's very cute. Very cute.
It really is. So if look, Popok always ends Legal AF by talking about how people can support our show, support this cause, support this movement. And so it wouldn't be right if I didn't mention how much we love our listeners and followers. And also if you can subscribe to Legal AF, MissTrial, the Legal AF YouTube network, and on the YouTube channel, I should say, and just thank you so much for being here and for listening and supporting all of the Midas Touch efforts to bring the truth and information to everybody. So get out and make sure you're registered to vote.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up for the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.